just with YouTube.
I think we are live on YouTube.
Yes, we are. Hello, hello, everyone.
Hello, effect enjoyers. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Who do we have here?
Let's see.
Let me crack open the office hours
Chat.
Yeah, the office hours chat. Then some meetups, office hours. There we go. There's the chat.
There we are.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone.
So there was a question in the office hours Discord.
Yes.
That was related to creating an end-to-end project that shows off all best practices for building projects in V4 and blah, 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 blah. I don't think we're going to do that during office hours. Office hours is meant to be more like sharing pearls of wisdom and like going through pieces of code and doing code review and answering questions, that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't want office hours to turn into a like lecture-based workshop kind of format. I'd rather keep it focused on answering questions and like doing code review, that sort of thing. Are there plans to release official Oxlent rules by chance? I've been writing a few for us internally, but I think that we eventually will publish the Oxlent package that we have in V4 internally. I don't remember the context of why we haven't done that yet, but I can talk to Sebastian and see if we can do that.
But still,
so there was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mattia.
But still, Oxlent powered ones right now are primarily AST based, not type aware, and even like the type aware checking from those kind of projects is not extensible. I mean, you cannot define your own rules that are type aware. And so, yeah, usually the LSP diagnostics mode does a lot of that. But again, most of the lint rules you find around the planet for effect are AST based. And they are nice, but they like, yeah, sadly no type of were rules, and sadly the fact that you don't have types, like this allows you to do a lot of interesting lints that you can do in effect, thanks to effect having like semantic meaning for its types.
I think that someone brought up seeing a Twitter post about linting rules for effect. I think that was a biome post, actually.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering the same one. And Matthias had suggested, or Wald Matthias had suggested maybe a small project that wants to migrate to effect, bringing up relevant parts that need the most attention. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that this I'd like to keep office hours focused on code review, on how to get things done with effect, and less about like, hey, we're gonna build XYZ with effect. Like we could do those types of streams ourselves individually if we want to. I don't want office hours to devolve into tutorials.
Yeah, it could be interesting to focus on some part of the migration, like having them as case studies, but mostly not like, here's how you convert your existing V3 application.
Blank Yu says STM was such a great talk, really changed the way I was thinking about systems that operate with transactions. Great work, guys. Thank you very much. It's all Mike, really. It's all Mike. We're just We're just orbiting Mike at this point.
I mean, we learned last time that everyone is here just for Mike, right?
I mean, we lost at least half the audience when Mike wasn't on stream when we started office hours today. So, but in all seriousness, does anybody have any questions or code they'd like us to review or anything like that? Because again, I didn't prepare anything for this particular office hours. I think there is a question in the office hours channel, maybe. Something I struggle with in both V3 and V4 is observability around HTTP API. HTTP API will log and set the trace error using the schema error from the API, but normally you want a richer error, including an underlying cause in your observability, but not in what you send to the client. I end up with some custom schema errors with non-encoded types, but I feel like I'm missing something. So I feel like there's a lot in this question. I think one of the first things maybe that we could address is schema related errors. Like before your HTTP API handler even gets hit, like getting an error. In V3 and V4, you can include the HTTP API decode error in your like error spec, and that will make sure that the error is sent to the client. But that may not always be what you want. You may want to like do kind of like some observability or logging or whatever, or maybe you're debugging and you want to see what's going on, and you're not getting to the handler at that point. I have found in V4 specifically, because middleware got a lot, in my opinion, easier to reason about in V4. In V4, you can just define a middleware that catches like these errors, which is really nice because in V4, middleware is just an effect. It's like a function that receives an effect and then returns something that you do to that effect.
Drops the execution.
Yeah, and so I really like in V4 how middleware just feels like normal effect composition, like the actual handler for middleware. So like I had a use case a little while ago where I was helping somebody migrate their HTTP API to V4, and I was getting some decode error, and I had to log what was going on before it hit the handler, and I just used a middleware to do that. I literally did like defined the middleware, and then in the handler I just did a catch tag of schema error. In V3, I feel like it's a little bit more annoying, and that's why we redesigned it for V4. But yeah, I'm not Eastballs. I'm not sure if I answered any or all of your question. Maybe Mattia has some more context that he wants to share. But
I think you covered up most of the stuff. Again, V4 has like a model of middleware that works really better compared to V3. But yeah, I think you covered everything, I would say. Yeah.
And I would also say that if we didn't answer your full question, just let us know. And try to give us a little bit more specifics because it'll help us like zero in on what's actually going on and how we can help. Matthias linked something in the RPC channel in Discord. I have a question about using effects RPC feature and HTTP API for that matter, and namespacing the tags IDs of groups, calls, middlewares. Is it necessary to use them like one would with normal effect services? I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question, but do you understand the question, Mattia? Because I think what
yeah,
go ahead.
Go on. I would say that if I understand correctly, what they are asking is it necessary that the identifier of the RPC is globally unique? If I get correctly what they are asking, but I'm not sure if that's the point of the question.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using HTTP API or the RPC like integrations, you're going to need to use the APIs they expose to define middleware, which is 100% effect service based, and that's like by design, because usually it's not like always the case, but generally speaking, your middleware is going to need access to potentially other services in your effect application. So like, I don't know, maybe you need to fetch auth context from a database or something similar. In order to do that, you need your access to your database service, or maybe your auth service, or whatever. So that's why it's designed that way. It's designed to allow you to lean into the service based like design of effect. But again, not entirely sure I'm answering the question that the right way. Hadn't considered middlewares for this. Agree much nicer in V4. We'll try to play with that and see how it goes. Otherwise, I'll get back to you next week. Yeah, and feel free to ask in Discord too. I know we've all been a little bit more busy lately, but feel free to ask in Discord as well. Blank Yuwu says, I want it. When will Tim show up? But yeah, when we have office hours at a different time. Tim is
Time
sleeping
zones.
right now. I wanted a robust contract with IndexedDB, and I did not trust current libraries. Can you look into this project and tell me how I am thinking about? I don't have there's no link.
Yeah.
But we did just release, or Tim just released some work that was partially community and was partially done by the community. I believe Sandro contributed the IndexedDB modules along with some help from other community members, and then Tim sort of added on top of that to do like persistence and whatever. But Effect does have IndexedDB modules now in the platform APIs. In V4, sorry.
V4, yeah.
How do you find the skills used to generate plans to be executed by AI agents? Are you okay? Wait, is this like how do you develop skills to create a plan with an AI agent, or like how do I find like a skill to create me a plan? Because if it's the latter, I don't use skills.
Nope.
If it's the former, I feel like it's just practice. I don't know if Mattia, you want
No, I don't like skills at all. I think that there are even like articles out there and people that have benchmarked and see that skills are not that effective. They just bloat your agent context. But yeah, I don't use them much. The only thing that I started using recently and I like is like the comments used just to like trigger like an AI-driven workflow. But skills as they are, I don't like it much.
Christian, I know what you're talking about. Christian was referring to seeing some earlier commands or skills that we had actually defined in the effect. I think it was in the small repo. We had defined them. Sorry, I have a hair in my mouth. I think that when we were first starting to work on V4, we were still early in our understanding of like how to best use agents as well. So I think Mike had created some commands, maybe skills too, to, I think back then we were still working off of like PRDs, like I forget what it even stands for, project requirements.
Design.
I don't remember.
Or document.
Yeah, something like that. Project requirements document, something like that. Yeah, we deleted those because nobody was using them, and we don't use PRDs anymore. Yeah, I feel like my opinion is that we've oscillated in backward from where we were like several months ago, where like several months ago everybody was like, this is how you make your context perfect, and like you can use these skills, and the more skills you have the better, because your AI agent's always going to pick the best one, and MCP. And I feel like now everybody's walking that back, and they're like, you see a lot more folks talking about what I think the same things that we've been talking about, where focused context given to the agent like will always perform better than all of the other bloat that comes along with like MCP and skills and whatever. And that, not to say that there aren't certain MCPs that are like useful. I think there are definitely MCP servers that are very useful, but I think like most folks now have, like, there was a period of expansion where everybody was sort of like tailoring their harnesses to be like these massive knowledge bases that the AI could tap into. And then we all sort of realized collectively that that wasn't making the agents perform better. And now I feel like there's a contraction where like people are sort of like focusing their harnesses in. And maybe that's just me. I literally deleted every skill, every MCP server, everything out of my harness, and now I just talk with the agent and make plans and let it run. But anyway, yeah, those commands I think were just, I think, were to create PRDs, and also I think there was a command for porting stuff from V3.
Yeah.
When we were still in the process of like porting features. I want to. I'll come back to your next question, Christian, but I want to go backwards and answer a few of other folks' questions. How would I go about striped locks in Effect v4? Just a custom wrapper over internal latches? Probably. Trying to think about like what the best primitive would be.
Some wrapper internal latches. Yeah.
I'll come back to you, Space Motion. I'm not 100% sure yet. I need to think about it. If I were to use Effects HTTP server, what should I use for HTML templating? Handlebars, liquid. You could use whatever you want. I know that's like a frustrating answer. I'm really sorry.
The best answer of them all.
I mean, it's true. You can use whatever you want.
Yeah, that's true.
You could even use I feel like I'm not qualified to like answer these questions about SSR and all the other acronyms, but I feel like you could probably even use SSR with like a React situation, but I don't know. Yeah, you could. I don't think there's limitations. Use React.
Use React.
Mattia, did we miss any other questions?
I think that we are up to how do you steer your agents to follow desired patterns when writing code? I also went down those rabbit holes. I think that's the only one we missed right now.
Sorry, I missed what you were saying. I was reading somebody else's comment.
We were saying we were asked, how do you steer your agents to follow desired patterns when writing code? I also went down those rabbit holes.
I can't watch today's stream, so show cluster. Regarding steering agents, I don't know. I feel like lately, I haven't been thinking too hard about it. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I feel like I've just been very focused lately on. Okay, I'm gonna be even more honest than I typically am on stream, but like I haven't been using LLMs to write a tremendous amount of code recently, and I feel like this is a trend I'm seeing emerge on social media anyways, like in our kind of like little tech bubble. But I've been using LLMs for very repetitive tasks, but for tasks where like it's like a net new feature or like something I want to fix, or it requires more thought than just like mechanical find replace, that sort of thing. I've been doing this thing lately where I work with the LLM to plan out the feature just like I normally would. And then I sort of like iteratively go back and forth with the LLM where like I'll write some code.
Mm,
I'll have the LLM take a look, see if it has any suggestions on how to improve things. Are we iterating in the correct direction towards the design that we proposed? As I'm writing code, like I'll ask if I decide that going in a different direction makes more sense. Well, like so it's kind of like I'm almost like pair programming with the
per programming,
LLM,
yeah.
but instead of having the LLM write more of the code, I feel like I'm writing more of the code lately.
I
I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that that makes a lot of sense. It also like pairs to something that I have been doing as well recently, where I find myself more and more like in a phase where I write pseudocode in the file, even things that does not like properly type check or like make sense, but just give like the inside of what I would like the code to do there. And then I go all together with an LLM saying, okay, let's now implement these that I've sketched out as a pseudocode, as something that doesn't work, doesn't even compile, and go and say, okay, now start by implementing this bit, and then this bit, and then this bit, and I'll fix manually this for you. No, you got this wrong. I fixed it for you. Okay, now we can go on next piece. I'm finding myself more and more when I have, as you mentioned, like features or like critical points of the application where like you want to manually control where the bugs could be, or like the in the case of effect the unhandled failures that you discover as you compose your um, your computation. You accumulate your errors and you find what you want and you decide as you go.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mattia. I don't know. I like I said, I feel like we're in this contraction period now
Mm,
with agents where folks are sort of realizing like agents are like super powerful and they make us a lot more productive, but then like I feel like more and more folks are starting to sort of uh realize the potential pitfalls of the massive amount of tech debt that these agents can introduce if you're not really careful about the code you write.
mm,
And I mean, that being said, like, yes, you should absolutely be leveraging AI in your work, but like, there's not this like rule that works well for everything. If you're a startup, I was listening to actually it was the New York Times daily podcast the other day. They literally had an episode where I think it was published yesterday where they talked about this one of the reporters from the New York Times went out across the US and interviewed like 75 software engineers about how they leverage AI and like if they're worried about it replacing their jobs and like if they're worried about it affecting their skills as a programmer. It was really interesting because it kind of resonated with me where uh, the sentiment was generally like positive on AI, and the way that folks were using AI for their jobs differed depending on the type of company. So like
mm,
if you're a at a startup, like obviously you can potentially in ingest more tech debt upfront because you're trying to develop something usable and test the market
got
with it, right? But if you're
gotta
like
go fast.
the yeah, go fast, break things like, but if you're in like a larger company like Google or something like that, or Amazon or Netflix or any of these like large, like more established tech companies, yes, you're still using AI in your daily job, but instead of it like writing most of the code for you, maybe it's only writing 50 or 40% of the code you write, and then you're still like carefully looking at things. There
Mm,
was another thing I listened to recently. I don't remember if we talked about this last time, where I forget if it was an article or I need to like start putting these things somewhere so that I can reference them during office hours. But it talked about where the bottlenecks are now in
mm,
software engineering.
mm.
And previously, like the bottlenecks were, I think maybe it was Karpathy that wrote this. I honestly can't
Yeah,
remember.
I read that as well. I read that as well. So I confirm that's not an hallucination. I have seen that
Okay.
as well, I think.
Okay. It was not a dream. It was but anyway,
It was not an LLM hallucination. It existed.
the TLDR was that like the like the rate limiting step of software engineering has moved from like writing code to reviewing code. And when the author's thesis was that in general we're not moving any faster than we were before, because the burden has shifted from writing the code to reviewing the code, and we still need humans to review the code and approve it and whatever. And we don't have more humans to review the code. It's the same number of humans. We're producing way more code, so the bottleneck now is like at the review stage. Anyway, it was an interesting read. But I don't know how I got on this tangent, but the point that I was trying to make is that I think there's a large contraction happening where people are like maybe starting to be more judicious with how they leverage LLMs, which I think was naturally going to happen in the future anyways. If it didn't happen now, I think it was going to happen once like token subsidization sort of went away. But anyway, that's how I've been developing with it lately. Wow, a lot of stuff came in since I was ranting. Let me go back to Space Motion's question about striped locks. I don't know exactly how I would design this. I would need some time to think about it. But I feel like usually with a striped lock, the classic example is like an array-backed hash map or something like that, where you have a single lock per bucket in the hash map, right? I feel like you could probably design that with a collection of latches per bucket in effect, and that would probably be fine. If you wanted multiple permits per bucket, you could also use semaphore for that purpose. But you would need like something custom. We don't have anything built into effect that does the same thing as a striped latch, to my knowledge. Watch Tim enter the chat and be like, actually,
well,
actually, I was building this thing.
But yeah, ideally just having like an array of latches and then using the effect hash modulo the amount of entries that you have in that array should be enough, right?
I think so. Where in V4 do you find LLMs consistently fail to generate a valuable contract? I'm not sure what you mean by contract. If you mean where do I feel like they struggle the most, I'm going to be real honest. I don't think that they struggle in very many places in pre-established library code. I think that they require much more guidance when working on new features. But I still think that they do a pretty good job with like planning out new features. I think like I tend to be a little bit more careful with with just accepting like carte blanche the LLM written code for inclusion in the library, because usually there are like small errors that we don't like not errors, but like small things that we don't like to introduce into the code base. Because again, like the more patterns the LLM has to draw on from your code base, like the cleaner your code base is, the better the LLM is going to perform, because it's pattern matching on your existing code base. So I'm not sure what you mean by contract though. So hopefully that answers the question, but let me know if it doesn't.
And usually what you spend most of the time with is, as you mentioned, like starting a new project, because you want to carefully like bake those patterns in your code base. And then, as you mentioned, like the LLM can start gaining from that discussion and that manual pattern you built altogether with the LLM.
If you have time, you should check out Oxide Computer's LLM usage policy. I just pulled it up. Are we just like having an LLM discussion stream? This feels like not office hours at all.
LLM hours.
Yeah, I don't want to go through this on stream, because again, I feel like we're getting very much into whatever, but I am looking at this and it is interesting. I like that they actually put together a kind of like, this is how we view LLM usage at the company. And anyways, maybe we'll talk about it the next office hours or something. But yeah, this is interesting. I like that they talk about anti-patterns as well in here. Anyway, are there plans for a state machine package that uses machine and procedures as a foundation? Well, funny you should mention that.
Glad you ask.
I'm glad you asked. And Bishel Roy, I do see your comment in Twitch, in the Twitch chat about dealing with the learning curve of effect. Honestly, like, this is gonna be very what's the word? It's gonna sound dismissive, but I think that cloning the repo and asking questions to the LLM about effect and how to use it, that's exactly how I've learned how to write Rust over the last like 6 months, or I guess it's been almost like 8-10 months now. I cloned a bunch of like Rust projects that I was interested in like working with for something internal, and I just started asking questions to the LLM, and it taught me Rust. I'm not like the best Rust developer on earth, but like I could write Rust code now.
Yeah. It's funny because I had the same experience, but with Go. so yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
also,
I feel like that's exactly what we've been talking about the last like 20 minutes as well with the LLMs. It's like they're really good at like doing research and like helping you learn about things. Like don't turn your brain off as a developer, right? Like use the LLMs to teach you things too. Don't just like I find it so strange when I hear people talk about LLMs like writing all their code, because I'm like, yeah, fine, you're moving faster, but like as an engineer, are you improving your skill set? Are you actually learning about what the LLM's doing? Are you going to be able to like work with this system that you're producing after the fact? So anyway, I use the LLMs to teach you about things too. Yeah. Let me share this.
Yep.
It's not private, so I can. It's literally a PR in the small repo, but. So let me zoom in here. Pull the chats up. So Mike has been hacking on a unstable like state machine-esque thing for Effect v4. And then also Tim recently released effect-genserver.
Yep.
Which for those of you who are unfamiliar with what a gen server in Elixir is, you could go look and read about it. I didn't know what it was before Tim like showed me his initial version of this. But it's basically like an abstraction for client server interactions that function almost like a state machine. I'm going to explain this terribly, but anyway, he implemented a gen server for Effect. I don't know why this is not highlighting. Oh, because he named it README. Let me go in here. So like, let's look at the example of Mike's code here. Is there an example or is it just tests? Just tests.
I think there are tests, yeah.
So in Mike's example here, he's got a bunch of different like actions and states and things like that going on. So we've got, let's look at the actual definition here. We've got events. You can create a machine from events, an initial state, and different states that you can be in, right? The events in question are create, rename, delete for this user machine. The initial state here is uncreated user. And then you define handlers for each state. So uncreated, you can create from uncreated. So this is a valid state transition here, and you can define the handler for that. Similarly, once users are created, you can a valid state transition would be either renaming or deleting the user. And so like this is a very simple state machine. But Mike's been kind of like hacking on this in his spare time, seeing if he can like get this to be to a place where it's he feels like it's well designed. But anyways, if you're curious about this state machine prototype, feel free to contribute to the discussion. I don't know what the latest is. Let's see. Yeah, there's it's a very active PR that's being worked on here. So feel free to get involved and add commentary, because I think Mike is looking for feedback as well. And obviously try out Tim's Gen server as well if you like Elixir. Different problems being solved here, right? State machine versus like the Gen server is kind of cool because you can make it work sort of kind of like a state machine. You don't really have control over like transitions and things like that so much, but you can handle different events coming in on the Gen server, and you can then derive like an RPC server from the protocol you've defined in your Gen server, which is kind of cool. So anyway, feel free to play with both. They're both like really early. What else do we have here? Hi, quick question. Oop, I just scrolled unintentionally. Hi, quick question. I was checking out Effect Cluster, but didn't find that much documentation. Are there any docs I can refer to or any example projects? Not really. The best place to go right now are the tests. But yeah, not really at the moment. I think like, man, I sound like a broken record. I need to. I have this like article or this blog post in progress, where for the Effect website I can show it. Website pull requests. I have this like blog in progress here. Preview. I still need to add more content to it, so please don't take this as like
a final version.
Exactly what to do. But like, clone the Effect repo and ask it your LLM questions about cluster. Like, just that is my recommendation right now. And this blog explicitly talks about why we recommend things like subtrees. We recommend subtrees over submodules. And this blog kind of talks about why and how to create one in your project and how to manage it, and like configuring, like, for example, like VS Code to work well. But the whole point here is that like LLMs are really good at searching code and blah, blah, blah. We've talked about this before. But yeah, to learn about cluster in the absence of documentation, because the reason there isn't documentation is because we're still iterating on all of these modules quite a bit. So in the absence of documentation, clone the project, ask it questions, ask your LLM questions. I don't know how anyone has the energy to not basically stay behind the driver's seat. It's so much harder than regular programming. Yeah, I mean, there's trade-offs piloting the LLM, right? You could take your hands off the wheel and just deal with whatever slop it produces.
It depends.
Yeah, there's definitely trade-offs to that as well. Why can't I resize my browser window? There we go.
Okay.
Unfortunately, over 95% of teams that use Effect, statistics have been validated. Users are saying over 95% of teams.
99% of the people.
95% of teams are blocked upgrading to V4 due to no drizzle support. Wow, 95%. That's crazy. Where did that statistic come from? I'm just kidding, homie. I know it's a pain in the neck that you can't use drizzle yet, but the drizzle team is working on V4 support. Is v4 stable enough if open code uses it? If open code uses it, it must be stable, right?
Yep.
I write all
Yep.
new code with v4. So do I. What a coincidence.
Yep.
So does Mattia. What a coincidence. It must
Even
be
before it
stable.
was, yeah, even before it was officially on npm, right?
Yeah, because I was wondering how to do the give me X amount of buckets. I know effect has hashing, but do I just take the modulo then? Yes, I would say your key to whatever your striped lock implementation is going to be should be something hashable. You can't, I forget if you can enforce that on the type level. In v4 though, you could just hash whatever the user gives you, and like if it's not a hashable type, you'll just, you know, if it's reference equality, you'll get unstable hashes, but it's the same as like any of the modules we design. We don't enforce that the key is hashable at the type level. But if the key is a hashable type, you'll get a stable hash for that type. And then you can just take the modulo over the number of buckets. But you probably need to predefine the number of buckets up front with that type of implementation. I find myself using effect as a contract layer with an API because a lot of the time the frameworks we use are a bit biased. I find replacing bigger parts of a framework stupendously harder than working around them, hence the word contract. Yeah, I mean, for contract definitions, like defining a specification for an API, I would obviously I would lean into schema. But I don't know if that answers your question. Sorry for asking about state machines. It seems like we got Mike on a roll with our questions. You weren't the only ones asking about state machines. There was quite a few individuals asking about state machines. Sometimes, every once in a while, Mike gets like nerd sniped into doing something. And this just, I was surprised when I saw this PR get opened because I wasn't expecting Mike to get state machine nerd sniped, but here we are. Rust library documentation tends to be excellent. I will argue that very heavily, especially for some of the libraries that I've been using for low level stuff on Linux machines with Rust. I will debate that very heavily. And these are like popular libraries that are not super well documented. I'm not going to call them out because I think that's not nice, but I will say just blanketly saying Rust library documentation tends to be excellent. I think it's no better than the JavaScript ecosystem. I'm going to be honest. I think the difference is Rust docs, right? You can like create a documentation site out of your package. It's like built in, but yeah, I'm not going to go on that tangent. Just index the repos you'd like to learn about using Deep Wiki. Most favorite question after indexing: can you roast this code? I haven't used Deep Wiki very much. I find my workflow with agents is like so simple. It's literally me like cloning projects into my project with as subtrees, and then just asking my agent questions and working with my. I have the most basic LLM workflow I think on the planet. Like, not doing anything fancy.
Yeah. So do I.
So I guess don't ask me for fancy tips because I'm always going to say the same thing.
Pay your provider subscription. That's the only tip I would give you. Otherwise, it won't work.
Pay your provider subscriptions. That's right. That is only a good solution if you know what to ask. Well, I mean,
yeah.
You could just ask very general questions and then zero in on the things that you're interested in, right? You could start very general and then like zero in. I frequently have branches that I work on for a few days that go through like multiple iterations where I wipe out all the work I did and restart from scratch, like just based on like experimentation I did and whatever. And Anyway, I don't even use a subtree. I have the small repo cloned and add it to my VS Code workspace, or keep a separate VS Code instance, small repo open to query with basic questions. I think that's like whatever you have to do to get the project into your project is fine. I think just having it under the same directory, the LLM has to go through less work to search it, right?
It is also not just less work, but it is also like that. I think the LLM will more probably incidentally find the solution and the patterns, because the LLM, like for example, to run rip grep in the folder you start your coding harness in, and if you have inside of that folder the effect small repo as well, that means that trying to search for something will end up in the LLM searching inside of the effect small repo as well, which is not the same exact thing if you have your effect small repo outside of your harness directory, I would say. But that's my personal opinion.
Somebody asked me to share the work in progress blog post I was making, so I shared it. But please don't take it as the final version. I still have to add like I want to add a section in there that talks about like what you can put in your agents.md to make it explicitly look. I mean, it's so stupid. It's literally a line that says like, before writing any effect code, read this.
Yes.
and like, I typically point the agent at this LLMs.md because I think Tim did a very nice job with some of the in the AI docs here. And then the agent will go and explore other things if it needs to, but at least it can get like some good patterns from looking at this stuff. I don't know. I've had good performance with that. Your mileage may vary, but cloning the repo and pointing your agent at it is the minimum. And then the other thing I wanted to add to that blog post is like telling the agent to, like, if you are interested in using cluster, for example, we have this thing in the effect small repo called the dot patterns. And I find this is really useful for when the agent does a ton of exploration and it uses up a ton of context, get it to distill that into some best practices. So for example, like here in patterns, I mean, these are manually written, I think, but you can generate these with your agent as well. Like you tell it, I don't know, explore how to use the effect cluster, or explore the effect cluster implementation in the small repo or in the effect v4 repo here, and you point it at the repo. And then you say, after your exploration, generate me a markdown document of best practices and usage patterns for effect cluster, right? And it's like super simple, but then later you can delete that session off your machine, right? You could open up a new session with your agent, fresh context, whatever, point it at the pattern and be like, okay, here's some best practices for using cluster. Let's build a feature with cluster, right? So like, anyway, I want to add those two things to the post. I just haven't had time. I'm using effect in my extensions content script and it's working beautifully. Thanks. You're welcome. Thank you very much for your thanks. The team appreciates it very much.
Yep. Glad to hear that.
Can you post the link to the effect blog post with subtrees, please? I'll give you the PR. I guess I can. It doesn't really matter. I'll just.
It's out there. People will find it. You can hide it as you please, but people will find it.
No, not comment. Preview. Blog. This one. I will put it here, but again, I'm just making it very clear that that is a work in progress post and it may change. With effect query, I encountered a situation where the produced hash key was the same with different payloads.
If I make it PR,
you may get colliding like hash key, like there may be collisions. the hash is not deterministic. I mean, it is a deterministic hash, but it's not guaranteed to be unique, if that makes sense. The hash is kind of like a hint for the equals functions. Like, I wouldn't trust the generated hash to be 100% unique across every type. The point of hash is to be an optimization for equality checks.
Bucketization.
Yeah. Funny, I actually read those AI docs to find best practices for writing the code myself.
Well,
the best
humans
artificial intelligence is our own artificial intelligence. Because we all are artificially intelligent, aren't we? Did we miss any questions? There was a question in Discord. Hello, everyone. How do we run workflows? Do we run the workflow in a function and execute it every time we want it to run? Well, you'll need a workflow engine and a workflow runner, I think. Yep. Forget the exact. Let's look at packages, effect, test, unstable. Where's workflow? So you'll need the layer for your workflow definition. Yep. And then you'll need a workflow engine implemented. Yep. And I think that that's really all you need to run workflows. But yep. Generally, you would like. Go ahead, Mattia. Sorry.
I would say that there is generally like the effect workflow one is baked by the cluster workflow engine, which will run basically behind the scene on effect cluster. You can run, there is a single cluster. I don't remember every time. I remember there is inside there is something called single cluster. It is basically running a cluster with a single node and persistence in there. I wanted just to ask, in your question, you mentioned, do we run the workflow in a function and execute it every time we want to run this within a function? Do you mean an environment like a Lambda function, or you do mean a function like in the programming sense of a function? It's not clear to me. I don't know if for you, Maxwell, is clear. Are you muted, Maxwell, or is it my mic?
No, I'm muted.
Okay,
it was my fault. There was a car outside that was very loud.
No worries.
Yep, I get that they can. Sorry, let me answer the cluster question first. So first of all, there was another question about the Git subtree vendor blog thing. Please look above in the chat. I posted the 2 different links to that subtree blog. And please keep in mind, it's not done. Please. Now I'm going to be getting messages from everybody. Well, I don't know how to use this thing. Well, yes, it's because it's not done. For the single runner thing, I pulled up the layer that Mattia was talking about for the single runner. This is like the layer you could use if you want to set up a single node effect cluster that can be used for running workflows. This is like useful if you only have one node and you want to like test things out, you can configure it. And then Mattia, I agree with you. I think we need more information from the user to answer the question. But generally, you need a workflow engine. You can use cluster to be the like the backing
implementation.
Yeah, I mean not the workflow engine per se, but like I think cluster, you're right, does have a workflow engine here. So you could use the cluster variant. But yeah, I think we need some more information about the use case. I wonder if there's any tests with cluster workflow engine. Let's see.
I think yes, there should be, if I recall correctly.
Here we go. It should run a workflow. So you could look at these tests if you want to get an idea of how to use the cluster workflow engine. YouTube deleted my links.
What? Oh, it seems so, yes.
The heck? Maybe Middleware's got some very strict rules.
Policy.
All right, I'll post them in the office hours. I'll make a thread for office hours 25. Hang on, office hours 25. I can still see my links in the YouTube chat, which is why I'm confused. That I posted both links in a thread under office hours. But you could also just go to, like, you know, the website repo and look at the PRs. Okay, so hopefully for Warrior Wayne, that's enough for you to go on to understand how to use workflows. I would look at these tests here. They'll give you an idea of the different layers you could plug together as well, because the test workflow layer obviously has testing things in it, right? So where are we? Let's go to test workflow layer. So this has like a bunch of like the test workflows in it, and then it has like the test workflow engine, which is test workflow engine here. So this can give you an idea of some of the layers you'll need to include or might want to include if you're building up like the stuff for cluster. Some of these may or may not be necessary, but all of the like the test, these ones are designed for running tests, right? So they're all going to be like things that are in memory.
I think that if you use the single cluster runner, you can get rid of almost all of them. You just need the cluster workflow engine and the single runner, because internally the single runner has parameters to specify the baking persistence for runner storage. Here you go. You can see memory, SQL, and you can also specify the sharding config, but behind the scene it will provide for you the sharding, the runners, the message storage based on the layer that you have choose of persistence. So yeah.
Cool.
And also, yeah.
Go ahead, Basia.
I know, but I was saying that that's one of the beauty of Effect, that you can like parameterize everything and say, okay, I want my own cluster running on this environment with this dependency. I had that. I even had at some point a cluster implementation that worked in a browser using the message broadcast channel, but was way too insane to ship.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully that's enough to get you going, Warrior. Let us know in Discord if you need more help. Let me see. Back to the hash query thingy. When fetching data with query keys that collide, I get the wrong data back. If you can provide us with a solid reproduction, Seba, like a minimal solid reproduction of this, we can take a look. But we need like a minimal minimal reproduction, so that we can actually like take a look and try to see if there's an issue or suggest ways that you could avoid the issue. I think I'm caught up on questions.
Yep.
And check.
I think so as well.
Cool. For the folks that were talking about IndexedDB earlier,
Oh yeah,
there is now an effect source unstable. Wait, no, I think it's in
you need
platform
to do
browser.
platform browser. Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of these IndexedDB modules that you can utilize. You can't see the link. It's in Discord in the thread for Office Hours 25 in the Office Hours channel now. But I'm glad you found what you were looking for. Let's see if there's any tests. Okay, we've got our fake IndexedDB. So yeah, you declare IndexedDB tables with IndexedDB table module. It's all backed by schema, which is really nice. What else do we have here? There's a whole bunch of other tables.
You can specify also the indexes in the table.
You can then wrap them all up into an IndexedDB like version, which is cool.
Yep.
And then there's some examples of like how to use these things. So anyway, if you folks were ever looking for a well-designed set of modules for using IndexedDB, check out the effect ones, see what you think. It's like I said, I think that it also supports persistence now.
Yeah. There is an IndexedDB. Yeah.
This one?
No, I think that is in the persistence. Let me check.
Somewhere in here, there's anyway, somewhere in here there's support for IndexedDB persistence. So is there any timeline when small will be out of beta? No. We're not committing to a specific timeline because we're still getting lots of really good feedback from folks about V4 and the stuff that's like missing and the stuff that needs to be fixed. And there's still like a few open questions. So I don't think that we don't have a specific timeline on when small will be out of beta. That being said, I mean, I'm using it in production. So are many other folks. So just because it's in beta does not necessarily mean it's not ready for production. It just means that between beta versions, we reserve the right to break things. So you can use it in production and be pretty confident in it, I think. But you just have to be ready for, to check the change log before upgrading and make sure that you've addressed changes that we've made.
Like service map changing back to context.
Like service map changing back to context.
And vice versa.
If there was ever a more divisive PR I've opened in my life, like the number of like DMs I got about this, even Tim trolled me. Tim likes service map better. I'm still not sure. I don't really. At this point, I'm going to be honest. I could care less what this module is called. You could call it A, and I would be fine with it.
Thingy.
Yeah, thingy. Thingy.service. What is your take on adding problem plus JSON primitives to HTTP API? I find myself always re-implementing the same wrapping of schema errors to problem plus JSON as well as defect mapping to 500 errors. I think that there is a PR open for our open API generator to do something like that. I don't know. I know that doesn't answer the question. Like, I think that adding problem plus JSON. It could be valuable. I think that we would need like a proposal for it to take a look at. Yeah. What is my take? I don't have a take currently. It could be useful. We would need to see a proposal. The only thing beta means is that by the end of the year, we'll be back to service map.service. Yep. That's right.
That's life.
That is right, my friends. Don't get so used to context. We might be back to service map before you know it.
Yeah. Just before releasing stable v4 in the last release candidate.
Just update to latest and ask AI to refactor everything.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's call it Max. That's right, max.service.
Max.
What was the rationale of renaming it? Well, I'll show you. How did I know I was going to end up discussing this PR on this office hours? Actually, we discussed this last office hours. I'm not doing it again. There was a poll in Discord that Mike created because he wanted to go back to context, and he broke his cardinal rule of never polling to poll to prove me wrong. 65% of people who answered said they wanted to go back to context, so we did.
You even remember by memory the results of the poll up to now.
I don't know. Now I gotta go check. It was something like 65.
I think that's the actual number.
I don't know. And now my window closed and
yeah,
whatever.
But yeah, it's the third time that we discussed that. So yeah, in previous office hours we discussed that.
The real answer to that question is Mike is our benevolent dictator for life, and ultimately we have to respect that once in a while.
We need
once in a while.
Context.
Sometimes it's just not worth. Sometimes it's just not worth arguing with Mike, you know. I might have voted for context before I started even using v4 exclusively. Sorry. Well, then I blame you. It's your fault. If there was no rationale, only Max's authoritarian powers. No, it was Michael's authoritarian powers. I kind of liked service map, but I do get context.
Yeah.
Yes. My only answer, my only comment to that comment is yes.
I was fine with both. I just hated the tag.
I like I said, I literally could care less what that module is called at this point in time. I did not like tag, so there was no chance I was bringing tag back. It could be called max.service. As long as we keep service around, I'm fine. Yes, I am tired of talking about this. Let's move on. What else can we talk about for you folks?
I can confirm v4 beta has been very reliable. Glad to hear that.
Especially in this AI world, context is an ambiguous term. Yes. Okay. We are done with the context and service map discussion officially. Now.
Closing the doors.
Closing the discussion on context and service map. Question: would any plans for a new Create Effect app be started while still in beta, or will this all be post v4 release era? It's definitely not going to happen during beta. Maybe post stable release. We could consider it, but like Create Effect app had lots of problems in that, like, Effect is not a framework, so to speak. It's a library. It's much more of a library. So like, it does not dictate how you structure your project. which is why, like, even when we made Create Effect app, like I wasn't sure about it because we built it for ourselves because it was a very opinionated set of like configs that we used. But yeah, I am not 100% sure in what form Create Effect app will return, if at all. Maybe we'll have like example projects that we will make available.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree. The fact that Effect being a library and not a framework like make everything it's not opinionated. You can use Effect with anything, so it kills the purpose.
Have you done any project code reviews yet, or is it too late for that? We haven't done any project code reviews yet, but we have been going for an hour and 15 minutes. So maybe you could save your project code review for the next office hours. And we can start with it next time because I'd love to not talk about AI for one office hours. As cool and relevant as AI is, this is Effect office hours, not LLM office hours.
and even not service map hours. So
oh my god. Closing it with out of service. Indeed. What percent of the Effect team's time is spent on V4? I think it differs per team member. I would say we're spending more time on V4 than we are on V3 at the moment. V3 is getting attention when it needs it, bug fixes and things like that. But we're really pushing on V4. So I think probably most of us are spending more time on V4 than V3 right now, especially because V3 is on a feature freeze forever. We just need to do a second poll. There will be no more polls. Mike has received the answer that he wanted. We have done what he wanted, and case is closed. If anybody asks any more questions about service map or context that are related to the renaming, they will be not answered. Chat, stop trolling me. To be fair, creating an effect app is so simple, there's little to gain. Creating an app is simple. Like you can use Vite Plus now, or you can use any of the other tools that spin up a whole project for you and then just install Effect. I'm not really sure. Like maybe for library development, I could see like some sort of template being useful. But
that would still be our defaults, the defaults we use, not like
right. You know,
not the required ones.
Exactly. It would be like everything that we do, right? Like all the tooling we use, all of the, you know, we're only publishing ESM only now, like the TypeScript and package exports configurations. It would be like highly opinionated to like what we use. So I'm not even sure that that's worth it. I've been using V4 Beta and Solid.js on the front end. Beautiful pairing using the reactivity, aka Atom module. Very happy to hear that. Please let us know if you have any feedback. Question: can we have a new Effect video where we build some small backend app, sort of, that's really showcases how it's better and fun than normal TypeScript? If any of us get the time to do that, we would make that video. But I'm not sure that any of us are going to have the time to do that. we're quite busy at the moment. Ultimately, you can always build. You can always build a template for yourself if you need for new projects. I feel like Create Effect app. Okay. Going to be tough, Max. I'm assuming that was in response to not trolling me anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just because chat knows that I get very easily animated. With Juem Rami, you should bring your project for the next office hours. Would love to go over a project with Effect 4 plus Solid.js. That would be fine. I don't know how to write. I don't know Solid.js, but happy to look at effect v4 code with solid. Maybe Mattia knows solid.
Very, very few.
Okay, well, Tim knows solid. Maybe we'll make an afternoon office hours for Tim, but then Mattia can't join. No, we're
Oh, we can as well.
We'll figure something out maybe. Okay, folks.
Okay.
If there are no more questions, we'll probably close it here. I'm gonna say the same thing I say every office hours. Thank you all very much for coming, but please come with code for us to look at. I know like it's interesting to chat about LLMs and things like that and how to use them, but I just feel like a broken record. Every time we talk about LLMs, my answer is always clone the effect project and point your LLM at it. And that will always be my response until something better comes along. It would be, I think it'll be much more interesting for us to review some code with folks. So anybody who wants us to take a look at their project on stream and get some feedback, if there are specific modules or things like that in your project you want feedback on, please let us know. And also come armed with questions. We'll be happy to take a look. Even if the projects are public, like open code, and you want to know why something was done a certain way, we can try to look and see if we can figure it out together. So anyway, thank you all very much for attending another week of office hours. We appreciate it very much, and we hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers, folks.